We're here to say goodbye to our brothers and sisters, to our fathers and mothers, to our friends.
How Jon Snow Came Back from the Dead. Jon Snow's story is one of the most iconic arcs in Game of Thrones, but nothing shocked the world more than the moment he died, and yet, even more shocking was how he came back. The resurrection of Jon Snow wasn't just a shocking twist, it was a pivotal moment that changed the fate of the Seven Kingdoms, redefined his character, and highlighted one of the most mysterious powers in Westeros: magic, prophecy, and destiny. Today, we dive deep into
keep them
how Jon
alive
Snow
in
came
memory
back from the dead, and why it was far more important than anyone realized. It all began at Castle Black, the stronghold of the Night's Watch. Jon,
everyone in this world,
protector of the realm from threats beyond the wall, had just returned from a dangerous mission to defend the North and maintain fragile alliances. But his leadership, unwavering honor, and moral convictions had made him enemies within the Night's Watch. A faction of his own men, resentful and fearful of his decisions, particularly his alliance with the Free Folk, conspired against him. They saw him as a traitor, a man too soft, too idealistic, and unfit to command. The betrayal was chilling. In the dead of night, Jon was lured into a courtyard and stabbed repeatedly by his own brothers, the men he had sworn to lead and protect. For the Watch, they whispered, striking blows that ended his life. The last sight Jon had was the cold night sky above Castle Black, a symbol of the harsh, unrelenting world he had tried to defend. Jon Snow was dead, and the Seven Kingdoms lost a hero, or so it seemed. But death, it turns out, was not the end for Jon. Enter Melisandre, the Red Priestess of R'hllor. She had long been a mysterious figure, wielding powers that defied the understanding of mortals. Her magic, fueled by fire and devotion to the Lord of Light, had always been enigmatic, sometimes terrifying, and often decisive. Melisandre believed Jon Snow had a greater role to play in the world, a destiny that could not be cut short by mortal treachery. His death, while tragic, was not permanent. Bringing Jon back from death was no simple ritual. Melisandre's methods involved fire, blood, and the invocation of her god's mysterious powers. She washed Jon's lifeless body, removed the remnants of his mortal wounds, and prayed over him in a ceremony steeped in both danger and hope. Her faith was absolute, yet even she could not be certain of the outcome. Death is the ultimate barrier, one that few, if any, mortals can cross. The moment of resurrection was dramatic, tense, and miraculous. At first, Jon lay still, his body cold and lifeless. Even Melisandre feared failure. Then, slowly, imperceptibly, signs of life returned. His chest rose and fell. His eyes flickered open. The man who had been dead now breathed again, reborn into a world that had moved on without him. Jon Snow was alive, but he was no longer the same. The experience of death had changed him, instilling in him a heightened sense of purpose, a clarity of mission, and a profound understanding of the cost of leadership. Jon's resurrection was more than a moment of spectacle, it was a turning point in the story of Westeros. Before his death, Jon was a respected leader of the North, but his influence was limited. Many southern lords were skeptical of his authority, while Daenerys Targaryen and her forces still held the strongest claim to the Iron Throne. But after his return, Jon's status transformed. He became a symbol of hope, a figure whose survival seemed destined by prophecy. His return demanded attention, commanded loyalty, and forced allies and enemies alike to reconsider their positions. Magic, of course, played a central role in his resurrection, but so did prophecy. From the earliest seasons, the story of Jon Snow had been intertwined with hints of destiny. Fans speculated about the prince that was promised, a savior figure prophesied to defeat the darkness threatening the world. While the full implications of prophecy are always murky in Westeros, Jon's resurrection seemed to align with these ancient predictions. He was no longer just a man of honor, he was a man marked by fate, a bridge between the living and the magical forces that shaped the world. The resurrection also profoundly affected Jon's relationships. For Daenerys, Jon's return was both a miracle and a complication. The love and loyalty they shared deepened, yet his rebirth raised questions about legitimacy, succession, and duty. Northern lords, previously cautious or skeptical, rallied around him, inspired by his miraculous survival and the symbolism it represented. Even the Free Folk, who had initially distrusted Jon and the Night's Watch, found renewed faith in his leadership. Jon Snow's return was a catalyst for unity in a fractured land. But resurrection came with a cost. Jon's near-death experience altered him emotionally and spiritually. He returned with a heavier understanding of the stakes, the fragility of life, and the weight of his responsibilities. He was more measured in his decisions, more aware of the consequences of power, and more committed to the fight against the Night King and the forces of darkness. Death had given him perspective, and survival gave him a renewed sense of purpose. From a narrative perspective, Jon's resurrection served multiple critical functions. It extended the story's tension, raised the stakes, and showcased the potency of magic in a world where the extraordinary can change the course of history. It also allowed the writers to explore complex themes: the morality of leadership, the cost of loyalty, and the question of destiny versus free will. Jon's return from death became a lens through which the audience could examine the consequences of power, the fragility of life, and the enduring hope that even the darkest nights can be overcome. Furthermore, Jon's resurrection directly influenced the outcomes of major conflicts in Westeros. Without him alive and leading forces, the coalition that ultimately confronted the Night King may have been fragmented. The strategy, leadership, and morale that Jon provided were pivotal in ensuring that the living could stand against the army of the dead. His death, while temporarily halting his influence, was a catalyst that made his return even more significant, a reminder that some leaders are destined to act when the stakes are highest. Ultimately, Jon Snow's resurrection is a story about more than just magic. It's about destiny, leadership, and the power of hope. It's about a man who lived and died for honor, who was willing to sacrifice everything for the people he led, and who returned to the world with an even greater sense of purpose. His revival reminds us that in a land dominated by betrayal, power struggles, and death, some forces, courage, duty, and destiny, can transcend even mortality. Jon's return also reshaped the political landscape of Westeros. It challenged Daenerys' claim to the throne, reinforced northern independence, and altered alliances across the realm. His resurrection was not just a personal miracle, it was a turning point that affected the Seven Kingdoms as a whole. The narrative of Jon Snow became inseparable from the fate of the living, the outcome of the war against the dead, and the ultimate resolution of who would sit on the Iron Throne. In conclusion, Jon Snow's resurrection was more than a shocking twist. It was a pivotal moment in the history of Westeros, a transformative event that reinforced his role as a leader, a hero, and a figure shaped by both destiny and honor. Through death, he gained clarity; through revival, he gained the power to unite, inspire, and lead. Jon Snow's return from the dead changed the course of the Seven Kingdoms, proving that in a world of fire and ice, sometimes survival itself is the greatest weapon of all. Jon Snow came back from the dead, yes, but the true story is not just that he survived. It's that his resurrection allowed him to fulfill his destiny, protect the realm, and remind everyone that in Westeros, even death is not the final word when fate demands otherwise.